Thanksgiving and Black Friday bring food, family, and sometimes fear. From strangers at the dinner table to shoppers who vanish into thin air. These are 10 true stories of holiday horror you won't forget. Welcome to the channel where real terror finds a voice. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you're brave enough to keep listening. My dad has always been the type of guy who you'd say is just a little too nice for his own good. A genuine sweetheart, sure, but also kind of a pushover. Like, he'd give you the shirt off his back if you looked even slightly cold. That's just how he is. And yeah, it's a nice quality until it's not. Until it ends up inviting something into your life or into your house that you can't take back. This story happened on Thanksgiving night, 2019, in Uptown Chicago. We don't have a huge family, so our holiday dinners are usually small and quiet. 6 people max. It's just me, my parents, my younger brother, and my grandparents. We all live close, so it's convenient. And it's always the same simple setup. Turkey, cranberry sauce, stuffing, mashed potatoes, just enough for everyone. Cozy. Normal. That night, dinner was just about ready. The turkey was already in the oven, and my mom and I were setting the table. My dad had gone out about 20 minutes earlier to pick up some last-minute items from the corner store, stuffing mix and cranberry sauce, of all things. The man waited until the day of Thanksgiving to realize we didn't have stuffing. Typical dad move. Anyway, we figured he'd be back in no time. But when he finally came home, he wasn't alone. He walks in with this guy, this middle-aged, scruffy-looking man in a ratty green puffer jacket and dusty black pants. The guy looked rough. Not just bad day rough. I mean like, I've been sleeping on concrete for the last month rough. His hair was all matted down, and his face was red and raw from the cold. My dad, smiling like he just ran into an old friend, says, "Everyone, this is Stefan. He's joining us for Thanksgiving dinner." Just like that, you could have heard a pin drop. My brother and I looked at each other like, what the hell? I turned to my mom, and she gave me the exact same look back. The only one who didn't seem rattled was my grandma, who just smiled and told Stefan to sit wherever he liked. While Dad went to the kitchen to start on the stuffing, he started explaining how he met Stefan. Apparently, Stefan was just sitting outside the store, huddled in a doorway, and Dad got talking to him. He said it didn't feel right to leave someone out in the cold on Thanksgiving night. Said we were a Christian family and that this was the right thing to do. His words, not mine. And listen, I get it. I really do. Being kind is important. But inviting a complete stranger into our home, our actual home, for a full holiday dinner? That's a line. Pretty major one. Still, what could we do? Stefan was already inside, already at the table. I was just grateful I wasn't sitting next to him, because his smell hit me like a brick wall from across the room. You ever smell clothes that have been wet and then dried without being washed? Imagine that, but worse. I tried not to gag. My mom leaned into Dad and whispered something, clearly not thrilled about this either. But it was too late. He was here. We all took our seats, and when the food was finally ready, we began our usual Thanksgiving prayer. My brother and grandma, trying to be inclusive, reached out to hold Stefan's hands, but he just sat there, didn't move. His hands were in his lap, and his eyes were wide open, bulging, almost, and completely unblinking. His mouth didn't move and he didn't say a single word. It was like he wasn't even aware he was at a dinner table. When the prayer ended, we all started eating, and the weirdness didn't stop. Stefan wasn't just quiet, he was cold. Every time someone tried to talk to him, he answered with one-word responses or didn't respond at all. There was no warmth, no gratitude, not even a basic thank you or, "This tastes great." And the way he ate, it was messy. Grease from the turkey was all over his fingers, and somehow he managed to get mashed potatoes in his hair. It was uncomfortable to watch. Now, I know how this might sound. Like I'm just sitting here trash-talking a homeless guy. But trust me, this goes way beyond poor hygiene or bad manners. This was different. The way he looked at people. The way he didn't seem to blink. There was something off about him. Something you could feel in your gut. Eventually, Stefan stood up from the table and said, "Excuse me, I gotta go to the bathroom." My dad pointed him down the hallway, half a flight of stairs, and told him it was on the left. He left the table and walked down the hall. Still no thank you. Still no expression. Just walked off. As soon as he was out of earshot, my mom and grandparents leaned in like they couldn't hold it in anymore. "What the hell were you thinking? Bringing that man in here?" My mom hissed. "He needed help," my dad whispered back. "We're doing the right thing. This is insane." My grandpa muttered under his breath, shaking his head. My grandma, God bless her, just looked worried. We kept eating in silence for a minute, until my brother spoke up. "Hey, he's been gone a while." We all kind of stopped chewing. "Yeah," I said, glancing at the hallway. "That's weird." Dad got up and went to check the bathroom. He was back in seconds. "He's not in there." Everyone stood up. My grandpa started muttering in Italian. My grandma looked like she was going to cry, and my mom was already yelling, asking my dad what he thought was going to happen. Meanwhile, my dad, my brother, and I started searching the apartment. We checked every room, every closet, under every bed. Nothing. The guy was gone. Then we found the window in my parents' bedroom. It was open. Not all the way, but enough for someone to climb through. That was when we all kind of understood. He had vanished. Just like that.
No goodbye.
No thank you. Nothing. We shut the window, locked it, and sat back down, trying to finish dinner like nothing had happened. But of course, all we could talk about was Stefan. Who was he? What was he doing here? Why did he really come? After dinner, we had dessert. Then my grandparents left. We cleaned up, washed the dishes, and eventually, everyone went off to their rooms. I stayed up for a while, watching TV in my room, trying to shake that weird feeling in my stomach. It was probably around midnight when I finally turned off the TV. That's when I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Not from the hallway. In my room. It was soft, but it was there. Steady. Heavy. I froze. I didn't move. Couldn't. My body went completely stiff. My eyes scanned the darkness, but I couldn't see anything. Just pitch black. Then I heard it again, closer this time. Like right next to me. I heard the soft rustle of fabric. Like someone shifting in a heavy jacket. And then, right in my ear, I heard a whisper, "Shoo." That's when I felt it. A hand. On my neck. I screamed. I didn't even think about it. I just shot up out of bed and ran into the hallway, yelling for my dad. Everyone came rushing out of their rooms, and I just pointed, yelling, "He's in there. Stefan's in my room." And then he came out. He walked out of my bedroom. Not in a panic. Not in a hurry. He just walked, looked at all of us, and headed for the front door like it was the most normal thing in the world. My dad, in full-on nice guy mode, just shouted after him, "Get out! You need to leave." But he didn't touch him, didn't stop him, just let him go. Stefan opened the door and disappeared into the night. By the time the police arrived, he was long gone. We gave them a description, but there wasn't much else they could do. They said we were lucky that no one was hurt, and to keep our windows and doors locked. That was it. We never saw Stefan again. And to this day, I don't know what he really wanted, or how long he had been planning whatever that was. But I know one thing for sure. My dad learned a hard lesson that night. You can be kind. You can be generous. But you can't trust everyone you meet. So, this happened a few years ago on Black Friday. Or technically the night before, since some stores open late on Thanksgiving. My local Best Buy is one of them. They usually kick things off at midnight for the early birds. You know, the crowd who will wrestle you for a discounted air fryer. Anyway, I wasn't planning to get in a fistfight over electronics. I just needed a new laptop, and I thought I'd beat the Friday madness by heading there right after midnight with my best friend, Taylor. The plan was simple. Swoop in, check out the laptop deals, maybe grab a few things if they caught my eye, and then bounce. That's it. Taylor and I showed up around 12:15 a.m., right after the doors opened. It was busy, but not chaos yet. We split off once we got inside. I headed straight for the laptops, and she went to check out headphones or something. I was browsing for a bit when a guy in a blue Best Buy shirt came up to me. Looked to be in his mid-20s, clean-shaven, with short dark hair and this really intense stare. He smiled and asked if I needed help finding anything. I told him what kind of laptop I was looking for, basic stuff, good RAM, solid battery life, decent price. He nodded and started pointing out some options. So far, so normal. But then, mid-conversation, he kind of switched gears. He asked, "So, what are you going to be using the laptop for?" I shrugged. "Just school. Some basic work. You know, web browsing and stuff." He laughed a little and said, "Cool, cool." Then, the vibe changed. He started asking me all these personal questions, like where I go to school, what my major is, where I live, stuff that had nothing to do with laptops. And not in a casual customer service kind of way either. It was like he was digging, prying. And look, I don't want to sound self-absorbed, but I do get hit on a fair amount when I go out. This wasn't new to me, but something about the way this guy was doing it just didn't feel right. It wasn't flirtation. It was fixation. I tried steering the conversation back to laptops. Twice, but he kept circling back to me. Eventually, he just flat out asked for my phone number. I laughed awkwardly and said, "Sorry, I don't give out my number." I was polite about it, trying not to cause a scene. But he didn't take the hint. He stepped closer and said, "Come on, we could hang out sometime. You seem chill." That's when I spotted Taylor walking toward us from across the store. I locked eyes with her and mouthed the word, "Help." Without hesitation, she called out, "Hey, come here, hurry." I turned back to the guy and said, "Sorry, I have to go." He didn't say anything as I walked away with Taylor, just stood there and watched. We made our way to the opposite end of the store, and I filled her in on what happened. She was immediately creeped out, and we both agreed we didn't want to see that guy again. So we left. But the night wasn't over yet. We were starving, so we decided to hit up a diner nearby. It's a local 24/7 place, always open, always good food. It was maybe 1 a.m. by this point. We slid into a booth and started looking at the menu. The place was nearly empty. Just a few people in the back and one guy sitting alone at the bar. I didn't notice him at first. His back was to me. But about 5 minutes in, I glanced up and froze. That jacket, that haircut, it was him, the Best Buy guy. He wasn't wearing the blue shirt anymore, but I recognized him instantly. He was sitting alone, pretending to look at the menu, but it was so obvious he wasn't really reading it. He was watching us through the mirror behind the bar. I whispered to Taylor, "Look at the guy at the bar. Tell me that's not him." She turned subtly, and the second she looked, he tried to turn away like he hadn't just been staring at us. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He followed us here." We got up immediately, didn't even order anything, just grabbed our stuff and walked straight out the door, trying not to break into a sprint. We got in my car and peeled out of the parking lot. My heart was pounding. I kept checking the rearview mirror the whole way home, but I didn't see anyone following us. We figured maybe he'd seen us leave and stayed behind. Maybe he'd just been some weird guy with a creepy obsession. We got to my apartment, locked the doors, and tried to shake it off. Taylor was sleeping over that night, so we figured we'd just stay inside and forget about it. Watch a movie or something dumb and funny to lighten the mood. But later that night, maybe 2 or 3 hours later, things took a darker turn. We were both still awake, scrolling through our phones in the living room. It was dead quiet. That eerie, middle-of-the-night kind of quiet. The kind that makes every little sound seem louder than it is. And then we heard it. 3 slow knocks on the living room window. Knock, knock, knock. We both froze. My apartment is on the ground floor. The living room window looks directly out onto the street. But when we turned to look at it, we couldn't see anything. Not the street. Not the sidewalk. Nothing. It was just black. Like the window was completely covered. Taylor whispered, "Can you see anything?" I shook my head.
No.
It's blocked. We didn't move for a few seconds. Then I slowly crept over to the window and peeked at the edge of the curtain. That's when I saw it. A shirt, hanging on the outside of the window. It was blocking the entire view. Someone had pinned it up from the outside. And not just any shirt. It was a blue Best Buy shirt. Pinned to the middle of it in huge block letters was a yellow post-it note. It said, "I don't work at Best Buy, bitch." I backed away so fast I almost tripped over the coffee table. We called the police immediately. They showed up within 10 minutes, but of course the guy was already gone. They searched the area, took our statements, and told us we were lucky he hadn't tried to break in. I asked them how he could have found out where I lived. They said it wasn't that hard. If he overheard a conversation in the store, or even caught a glimpse of my ID or card when I was checking out, it was possible. They recommended I file a harassment charge. But the problem was, I didn't even know his name, and since he wasn't actually an employee, we had no idea who he was. Just some guy in a blue shirt pretending to work at Best Buy. They told me I could try to get the store's surveillance footage, maybe hire a lawyer and force the issue. But that sounded like a lot for someone who didn't even know where to begin. I was scared. I didn't want to poke the bear. What if he came back? I stayed at Taylor's apartment for the next few days, changed my locks, bought a security camera, and for a while I didn't go anywhere alone. He never came back, but I still think about that night, about the way he looked at me in the store, about how he knew just enough to follow us, to find me. I think about how he watched us in that diner, how he waited outside my window in the middle of the night, just to send a message. Some people out there, they don't need a reason. They don't need a motive. They just see something or someone they want, and they decide to take it. Let me take you back to the night after Thanksgiving, 2 years ago. It was one of those dead-cold Midwest nights, where the air just slices right through your jacket and your car feels like an icebox no matter how long you let it warm up. I remember it so vividly because it was my first Black Friday shift, and my last. At the time, I worked at this mid-sized department store that was kind of a hybrid, part clothing, part electronics, part home goods. The kind of place where people rush in during Black Friday to grab off-brand TVs and microwaves on sale. I'd only been there for about 3 months, working mostly weekday afternoons. But for the holiday weekend, management pulled in pretty much every employee on the payroll. I got stuck with the worst shift. Thanksgiving night at 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. the next morning. Overnight. My manager called it doorbuster prep, but it felt more like punishment. I remember being exhausted even before I clocked in. My family had done dinner early, and I didn't eat much because I was already stressing about the shift. Still, I showed up on time, bundled up and dragging my feet through the sleet as I walked into the loading bay entrance. Now, here's the thing. Our overnight crew was always pretty small, 3 or 4 people at most. That night, it was just me. This dude named Marcus who worked electronics, and a woman named Jen who floated between apparel and checkout lanes. Then there was someone new, a guy I didn't recognize. Tall, lean, pale. He wore a standard black manager's jacket with the store logo on the chest. The first thing that threw me off? No name tag. And every manager I'd ever met at that place was practically married to their name tag. Still, he greeted us with this tight smile and said, "I'll be your overnight supervisor tonight. Just call me Mr. K." Mr. K? Weird name. Or nickname. I don't know. The way he said it just didn't sit right with me. But I figured maybe he was from a different location, called in to help manage the overnight chaos. The first couple hours were normal enough. We stocked end caps with last-minute Black Friday deals, unboxed electronics, and folded clothes. The usual grind. Mr. K didn't say much. He mostly walked the aisles, hands behind his back, watching us like a principal doing a surprise inspection. I started noticing little things, though, like how he never blinked, or how he always seemed to show up just as you were taking a breather, even for a second. And then, around midnight, he disappeared. Just gone. We didn't think much of it at first. Honestly, we were glad to have a break from his weird, quiet hovering. But when 1:30 a.m. rolled around and there was still no sign of him, we started wondering where he'd gone. That's when Marcus told us something weird. He said he thought he saw Mr. K standing in the break room, just staring at the security monitors. Not watching them like normal, just standing there, lights off, face inches from the screen, not moving. Maybe he's just tired, Jen said. Or maybe he's high. We laughed it off. But deep down, I think all of us knew something was off. Then came the first incident. It was just after 2 a.m. I was in the back near the stockroom when I heard this loud crash. Not like something falling, a thud, followed by what sounded like metal scraping the floor. I ran toward the sound and found Marcus standing in the small toy section, looking pale. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Yeah. Just thought I saw something." "Something?" He hesitated. "I thought I saw a man crawling across the floor in the aisle. But when I blinked, it was just a shadow." I stared at him. "Like a shadow person?" He nodded again, slower this time. "I'm not messing with you." Now, I'm not the superstitious type, but Marcus didn't seem like the joking kind either. The dude looked shaken. Like actually shaken. I told him to take a quick break. Go get some water. I cover his area for a while. 15 minutes later, Jen radioed me from the home goods section. She sounded panicked. I jogged over and she looked freaked out. "Someone's moving stuff around," she said. "I just watched 2 glass pitchers fall off the shelf, but no one was near them." I looked at the floor, shards everywhere. The shelf next to it was still vibrating slightly, like it had just been touched. I checked the security camera in that aisle using my handheld scanner. Nothing. Just static for a full 5 minutes before it returned to normal. Static. That shouldn't have happened. Our cameras had backup power. We weren't even in a blackout. I went to find Mr. K. He wasn't in the break room. Wasn't on the floor. Not in the manager's office. We searched the whole building, and he was nowhere to be found. That's when Jen asked the question I'd been thinking since the start of the shift. Does anyone even know who Mr. K is? We all looked at each other. I pulled out my phone and messaged my actual store manager, Linda, who was off duty. Just a quick, "Hey, who's the overnight supervisor tonight?" "Some guy named Mr. K." About 10 minutes later, she replied, "We don't have any Mr. K. No one was scheduled to manage overnight." Why? My blood went cold. We were alone in the store, with a man who wasn't supposed to be there. We regrouped in the break room, locked the door, and sat there whispering about what to do. Should we call the police? The company? Lock up and leave? That's when the overhead store PA system crackled to life. It was Mr. K's voice. Calm. Quiet. Way too close to the mic. "I'm very disappointed in all of you." Static. Then silence. Jen started crying. Marcus grabbed the break room fire extinguisher like it was a weapon, and I'm not gonna lie, I was ready to throw hands with a ghost if it came to that. We crept out into the hallway. The store was pitch black now. The only lights were the emergency strips along the floor, casting this eerie red glow up the walls. We made it to the front doors, and they were locked. Not just locked, barricaded. Shopping carts had been stacked on the outside, pressed against the glass from end to end. There was no way out. That's when we saw him again. Mr. K. Standing in the seasonal aisle where the artificial Christmas trees were. He wasn't facing us. He just stood there, staring at a tree that wasn't even plugged in. We didn't move, didn't breathe. Then slowly he turned his head. Just his head, not his body, and smiled. That's when the lights snapped back on, and he vanished. Gone. We were done. Jen called 911. We didn't care what the company thought. When the cops showed up 20 minutes later, the doors were suddenly unblocked. Like nothing had happened. The carts were neatly stacked in their usual place. And when they searched the store, no trace of Mr. K.
No jacket. No pamit stouchhead. No boat prints.
Nothing. The officers were nice about it, but you could tell they thought we were either crazy or sleep-deprived. The next day, we filed incident reports. The store reviewed the security footage. All they saw, 3 employees working a shift. Nobody else. No strange man. No Mr. K. But here's the part that still gives me chills. One of the camera feeds, just one, was corrupted. The one from the seasonal aisle. And in one frame, just one still image that didn't get wiped, you can see him. Mr. K. Standing in front of a dark Christmas tree, smiling at the camera. I quit that week. I haven't worked a retail shift since. And every Thanksgiving, when the Black Friday ads start rolling out again, I remember that smile. That voice on the PA. That name that meant nothing and everything at the same time. Mr. K. This happened Thanksgiving weekend about 4 years ago, when I was 16. My older sister, Jordan, had just gotten her license, and for the first time ever, our parents let her take the car out alone with me. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. We were just 2 sisters, finally out in the world, without mom or dad hovering over us. We lived in a small town, but there was a large shopping complex about 40 minutes away that always had massive Black Friday events. Big-name stores, fast food joints, even a small indoor mall. Our plan was simple. Leave the house late Friday afternoon, catch the evening crowds when they'd thinned out, and check out the deals. We weren't looking to fight someone over a flat screen or anything. Honestly, we just wanted to feel grown up. Like 2 independent women, you know? Jordan was hoping to snag some makeup or clothes, and I wanted to browse the gaming section for stuff I couldn't afford anyway. We arrived around 6 p.m. The parking lot was still crazy busy. Most of the early chaos had died down, but the strip was still crawling with last-minute shoppers. Jordan parked toward the back of the lot, way in the rear near a group of unused carts and a few lamp posts. The spaces up front were all taken. We hit a few stores, wandered the mall, and lost track of time. The sky had turned completely black by the time we started heading back, probably close to 9:30 or 10. As we walked out of the main exit and into the open air, something felt off. The parking lot was almost empty, like eerily empty. A few cars here and there. Most of the stores had closed early. The fast food places were locked up. It had gone from bustling chaos to abandoned movie set in just a couple hours. I pointed it out to Jordan, who chuckled and said, "Guess we closed the place down." We made our way to the car. That's when we noticed the van. It was parked right next to our car. A big, white, windowless cargo van. You know the type, like the one every true crime show warns you about. But this one had a busted taillight and spray paint streaks along one side. It looked like someone had tried to cover something up. There were no other vehicles within 20 feet of our car. Just our sedan, and that van. Jordan hesitated, keys in hand. Was that there before? She asked. I shook my head. No way. I would have noticed. She looked around the lot. It was dead quiet. And then, just as we got close, Jordan pulled me back. The van's engine turned on. Just like that. No sound before. No footsteps. No warning. Just ignition. We backed up, fast. Jordan grabbed her phone, but the screen was black. Dead. She cursed under her breath. Thought I charged it. Mine had 3% left. I handed it to her and she dialed our dad. While it rang, we started moving, fast walking back toward the storefronts. We didn't say anything out loud, but we both felt it. That heavy pressure in the air. That voice in your head screaming, "Don't turn your back. Don't turn your back." I peeked over my shoulder. The van was slowly rolling forward. Not speeding, just creeping. Like whoever was behind the wheel didn't want to make a scene. The call went to voicemail. Jordan tried again. The van sped up just a little. We ran. She grabbed my wrist, and we sprinted back toward the mall entrance, but everything was locked. We banged on the glass, but the security gate was down. Lights were off. No one inside. We ducked behind a concrete pillar just outside the main entrance, trying to catch our breath. That's when we saw the van park again. This time a few spaces ahead. It had circled around, blocked the lot's only exit. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, wearing all black, face mostly obscured by a hoodie and a baseball cap. But the way he moved, slow, deliberate, it made my skin crawl. He started walking toward us. Not running. Walking. Like he knew we had nowhere to go. Jordan whispered, "We can make it to the back of the building. There's a loading dock and a fence. We used to sneak back there when I worked at Starbucks." We didn't wait to plan. We just ran. The man shouted something behind us, but we didn't stop to listen. We took a hard right around the edge of the complex and followed a narrow alley. Trash bins, broken lights, and pallets of empty cardboard surrounded us. The air smelled like grease and rotting fast food. We reached the fence. It wasn't tall, but it had barbed wire at the top. Jordan pointed at the loading dock stairs. "We can climb the roof." She ran up the metal stairs and hoisted herself up. I followed, heart hammering in my ears. Just as I pulled myself onto the flat roof, we heard footsteps below. The man had followed us. I peered over the edge. He stood at the bottom of the stairs, just looking up, smiling. He didn't say a word. Jordan whispered, "We need to call someone now." I checked my phone. 1% battery. We tried 911. The phone died before it rang. No flashlight. No backup. Just two girls on a rooftop, trapped by a guy who somehow knew our car, our path, our location. We stayed low and moved toward the backside of the roof. It connected to another set of buildings. If we could get across, we might be able to jump down to a lower ledge and onto the sidewalk behind the shopping center. We crossed carefully. Every footstep felt like thunder in the silence. Behind us, we heard metal clanging. The guy was climbing the stairs. We didn't run, we crawled. Low to the ground, trying not to be seen over the rooftop edge. Then we heard another sound. A loud, booming male voice. "Hey!" Another voice joined in. "Get the hell out of here." Flashlights. We peeked up and saw two security guards from the neighboring auto shop. They'd spotted the guy. One of them had a radio. The other had already drawn a baton. The man turned and ran. Not back down the stairs, but across the roof. Straight toward us. We scrambled to our feet and ran the opposite direction. Jordan leapt down to the lower roof first, then reached up and helped me down. We dropped onto the sidewalk behind the buildings and took off running toward the nearest streetlight. We didn't stop until we reached a Taco Bell drive-thru, where people were still sitting in their cars. We banged on the glass of the order window until the guy inside opened up. He let us in, gave us water, and called the police. They searched the area, but the man and the van were gone. Totally gone. The police never found out who he was. There were no cameras pointed at the back lot. No license plate noted. We only had a vague description of a tall man in dark clothes. Could have been anyone. Could have been no one. To this day, Jordan and I still talk about it. How close we came. What might have happened if we'd been just a little slower. If her phone had been dead 10 minutes earlier. If we hadn't been able to find that roof. Now, every Black Friday, while people are out chasing sales and shopping carts, I remember that smile in the parking lot. And the man who didn't want a deal. He wanted us. This story takes place just 2 years ago, Thanksgiving night. I had just started working at a small-town retail chain, one of those everything under one roof types. Groceries, home goods, even a tiny electronics section tucked in the back. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough for a high school senior looking to save up for college. The store had decided to close at 8 p.m. that Thanksgiving to give workers some time before the Black Friday madness. Of course, we still had to be back by 4 a.m. for the sale setup. But the idea was to at least pretend like they cared about work-life balance. That night, I was on closing duty with 2 coworkers. Amanda, a no-nonsense single mom who ran the front end, and Mike, our electronics guy, who'd worked there for like 7 years and kind of knew everyone in town. I was new, but they liked me enough to throw me on a closing shift, so I guess that said something. Most customers cleared out by 7:30. A few lingered until the final announcement rang out over the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, our store is now closed for Thanksgiving. We will reopen at 4 a.m. for Black Friday. Please bring all purchases to the front register. I started straightening up the seasonal section. Plenty of random Thanksgiving leftovers still on shelves, and I noticed one guy still walking through the aisles. He caught my eye because, well, he didn't really fit the Thanksgiving crowd. Tall, thin, late 40s maybe, pale skin and this weirdly sharp jawline. Dressed in a plain gray hoodie and jeans.
No card. No basket.
He just wandered, slowly, casually, like he had nowhere to be. I gave him the usual, "Hey, we're closing up, sir. Registers are up front if you're ready." He didn't say anything, didn't even glance at me, just kept walking. Whatever. Some people are awkward. I let it go. 10 minutes later, we were locking up the front. Amanda had just rung up the last customer, and Mike was pulling down the security gate by the main entrance. We all sighed a little, finally ready to wrap up. Then Amanda looked at me and asked, "Where's the guy from Seasonal?" I frowned. "I thought he came up already." She shook her head.
No.
"I never saw him." We all paused. Mike muttered, "Maybe he ducked into the bathroom?" So we waited a couple minutes. No big deal, right? Then 5 minutes passed. Then 10. No one came out. Mike and I went to check. The men's room was empty. Not even a sound. We called out. No answer. Amanda did a full walkthrough of the aisles, double-checking every corner. No sign of the man. She radioed the back office, thinking maybe he slipped into employee areas somehow. Nothing. Now, you'd think the obvious answer is, he left without us seeing. But the way our store is set up, there's only one way out after 8 p.m., and it's through the locked front entrance. All other exits are alarmed or sealed, and none of the alarms had gone off. So unless the guy had picked a lock, climbed a wall, or pulled a Mission Impossible air vent maneuver, he was still inside. Amanda started getting nervous. Not scared exactly, just irritated. She called the police on a non-emergency line and asked if they could send someone to do a walkthrough, just in case. While we waited, Mike and I went to the back of the store to finish cleanup. We were walking past the break room when something weird happened. The lights in the hallway flickered. Not like a power surge, just in that specific hallway. Then the door to the manager's office creaked open. No one had been in there. I looked at Mike. He looked at me. We walked up slowly, called out again. Sir? If you're still here, the store's closed. Nothing. We peeked inside. The chair was spinning. Slowly. Like someone had just stood up and walked away. Mike muttered, "Nope," and turned around. We headed back up front. The police showed up a few minutes later. 2 officers, both regulars in the store. Nice guys. They walked the whole place with Amanda while Mike and I watched the monitors. And here's the part that made my stomach drop. At exactly 7:53 p.m., the man in the gray hoodie is visible on camera walking past the toy aisle. Then, at 7:54, the feed cuts to static. Only for that one aisle. Everywhere else stayed normal. For the next 10 minutes, the feed from that camera remained out. At 8:04, it returned. And the man was gone. He never appeared on any other camera again. Not leaving the aisle. Not approaching the front. Nothing. It was like he vanished. The officers finished their sweep, shrugged, and said the store was clear. We triple-checked the exits, turned out the lights, and left. But here's where the story gets worse. The next morning, I arrived at 3:45 a.m. to help with the Black Friday prep. Mike was already there, unlocking the back doors. We got inside, flipped on the lights, and right there on the front checkout counter was a folded piece of receipt paper. Nothing on it, except 3 words, written in shaky pen. "See you tonight." We didn't say anything at first, just stared at it. Mike picked it up, looked at the back.
No time stamp.
No register number. Nothing. Amanda came in 5 minutes later. We showed her the note. She looked at us like we were nuts. "You guys playing a prank?" she asked. We weren't. Black Friday was a blur of noise and chaos. Hundreds of people. Lines around the building. No one had time to think about gray hoodies or mystery notes. But that night, after we closed, Mike found another note. This time, taped to the mirror in the employee bathroom. "Still here." We checked the cameras again. Nothing. I worked that job for 3 more months, but I never worked a closing shift again. Amanda eventually requested a transfer. Mike stopped joking around and started carrying a pocket knife in his boot. We don't know who he was, or if it was a prank, or something worse. All I know is, some customers don't wait for opening hours, and some of them never leave. This story didn't happen to me directly. It happened to my cousin, Mel, back in 2017. But the details were so chilling, and she told me everything in such vivid, horrifying clarity. It's been burned into my brain ever since. Mel worked at a small diner just outside Pittsburgh. One of those old-school joints with leather booths, neon signs in the windows, and a jukebox that barely worked. It was family-owned and open 24/7, especially on holidays. Mel had been there almost a year, doing the graveyard shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Thanksgiving night into Black Friday was just another date on her schedule. The regulars were usually harmless. Long-haul truckers, insomniacs, lonely seniors, people who didn't want to be home or didn't have one. She knew most of them by name. That night, though, the vibe was different. She told me the shift started off fine, slow as usual. A couple came in around midnight, split a piece of pie, left a decent tip. Another guy grabbed a coffee and left without speaking a word. Totally standard. Around 1:30 a.m., this man walked in. Mel noticed him immediately because he didn't match the usual late-night crowd. He looked clean-cut, like someone who belonged at a corporate meeting, not a rural roadside diner in the dead of night. Gray trench coat, expensive-looking watch, neatly parted black hair. But what stood out the most, Mel said, was his smile. It never left his face. It wasn't a happy smile either. It was the kind that makes you uncomfortable. Why, strained. all teeth. He walked straight to booth 9. Now, this might not mean much to you, but booth 9 was different. It was shoved into the farthest back corner of the diner, right next to the storage closet, and behind that, the door to the basement. No one ever sat there. Even the regulars avoided it. It was too dim, too isolated. Some people swore it was colder than the rest of the diner. But that night, the man sat right down. Mel walked over with a menu and greeted him. He didn't respond. Just looked at her with that same grin and said, "Coffee." She nodded, brought it over, and asked if he'd like anything else. Still smiling, no, so she let him be. But every time she glanced in that direction, she found him staring back. Not at the menu, not at the window, at her. Every single time. This went on for a good 20 minutes. Then he did something strange. He got up and walked toward the storage closet. Mel called out, "Sir, that's a staff-only area." He ignored her. He kept walking, straight past the closet door, and toward the basement. The door wasn't even marked, just an old wooden slab with a rusty knob. It was always kept locked. Mel said she didn't even have a key, but the man opened it, just like that, and walked inside. She rushed back, heart racing, and found the door slowly closing behind him. She opened it and stared into the pitch-black stairwell leading downward. "Sir?" she called. No answer. She grabbed the emergency flashlight from under the register and pointed it down the steps. They creaked with every shift of weight. Dust motes hung in the beam. Halfway down the stairs, she heard something. Breathing. Not hers. Not heavy. Just steady. Deep. Like someone was waiting. That was enough for her. She slammed the door shut and locked it from the outside using the deadbolt above the frame. Her hands were shaking. She backed away from the door, nearly tripping over a mop bucket. And then she heard him speak. Through the door. Softly. Calmly. "I like it down here." That was it. Mel grabbed the landline and called the cops. When they showed up 20 minutes later, they found the door still locked. The basement untouched.
No footprints.
No sign of anyone down there. But booth 9? The coffee was still warm. And on the seat, placed neatly in the center, was a black and white photograph. It showed the diner. The exact same booth. But in the photo it was empty, except for one detail. In the mirror above the booth, barely visible, was the smiling man, watching from the reflection. Mel told the officers everything. They took the photo, checked the security footage. That's when things got even weirder. At 1:36 a.m., the camera shows the man walking in. At 1:57, he stands up and walks to the back. At 1:58, the footage glitches, freezes. When it resumes, he's gone. Vanished. No footage of him exiting. No door opening. Just nothing. Mel quit a week later. She couldn't go back. Not after that. She found out later that Booth 9 had a bit of a reputation. Back in the 70s, a man went missing from that very spot. Left his keys, coat, and wallet. Just disappeared. Some say he was last seen heading toward the basement. Others say he never existed at all. Now, whenever I pass a 24-hour diner, I glance toward the corner booths, and I wonder if someone's sitting there, smiling, waiting for the next person to look away, just long enough to disappear. This happened to me last Thanksgiving weekend, and to be honest, I still don't have an explanation for what went down. I'm not saying it was supernatural, but I'm not saying it wasn't either. I work in a small grocery store that's part of a regional chain in the Northeast. The kind of place where regulars know your name, and we still use paper time cards. Thanksgiving is always busy, especially the few days before it. But the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, is hit or miss. Most people are too busy raiding big box stores to bother with groceries. This particular year, I volunteered for the early Black Friday shift, 4 a.m. to noon. I figured it would be quiet, and I could leave early to go chill with some friends later. My manager, Pete, appreciated it too. He hates mornings. So I show up just before 4. Still pitch black outside, cold enough that the frost had iced over the inside of the store's windows. The parking lot was empty, aside from Pete's beat-up Civic. We both head inside, clock in, and start prepping for the day. Nothing unusual. The store lights flickered on slowly, humming like old fluorescent lights do, and we started going through our routine, unstacking the produce crates, prepping the bakery items, opening the cold cases. Then, just after 4:30, I heard the beep from the front sensor. You know, the one that goes off when the door opens. Pete and I looked at each other. "We're not open till 5, he said. I walked over to the front of the store to check. The automatic doors were still locked, but someone had just come in. The bell didn't lie. I scanned the entryway. Nothing. No one outside. No cars. No footprints in the frost. I figured maybe it was a sensor glitch. It happens. Except, the motion sensor by the freezer aisle blinked red. It had just picked up movement. Now, this is where things started getting weird. I walked to the frozen section slowly, my sneakers squeaking against the polished tile. The glass freezer doors reflected the overhead lights, and every time I moved, my own reflection flickered back at me. But as I turned the corner, there was a man, standing at the far end of the aisle, facing one of the freezer doors. Still as a statue. He had on a dark brown coat, hood up, black pants. His hands hung at his sides like he was waiting for something. I froze. "Sir." No response. I tried again. "Sir, we're not open yet." Still nothing. That's when I noticed something strange. He wasn't looking into the freezer. He was staring directly at the glass, like he was staring at himself or something behind his own reflection. Then, slowly, he raised one hand and pressed it against the freezer door. Palm flat. No movement. Just contact. I stepped forward, trying to get a better look. And that's when every light in the freezer aisle went off.
Boom darkness.
I jumped and instinctively stepped back. And when the backup lighting flickered on a few seconds later, the man was gone. Just gone. There were no other employees in yet. No customers. No open exits. I walked down the aisle, checked both ends, peered around the corners. Nothing. I even opened the freezer door he was touching. It swung open with a loud creak, and I felt the blast of cold air rush out. Empty. I went back to Pete and told him what I saw. He looked skeptical but agreed to check the security cameras. We rewound the footage to 4:31 a.m. Sure enough, the motion detector triggered. The freezer aisle camera caught it. And then there he was, the man. Same coat, same stance, same movement. But here's the thing. He didn't walk into the aisle. He just appeared. One frame he wasn't there. The next he was. And then, after the lights went out, the camera cut to static for 7 seconds. When it returned, the aisle was empty again. Pete turned to me and muttered, "That's some Ring movie crap." We laughed nervously, trying to shake it off. We figured it was some camera glitch, maybe an elaborate prank. Maybe we were just overtired. We went back to work. But about an hour later, a coworker named Rosa came in. She usually worked in the dairy section. I was helping stock eggs when I noticed her just staring at the freezer wall. "Hey, you okay?" I asked. She didn't look away. "I've seen him before," she whispered. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "Seen who?" She pointed at the glass. "The man behind the freezer door." Now, I thought she was joking until I realized she was shaking. Rosa told me that 3 weeks earlier, while doing a late shift alone, she saw a man standing inside the freezer. Not in the store. Inside the actual walk-in freezer. She thought it was Pete messing with her. But when she opened the door, no one was inside. She said she had dreams about him for a week afterward. Always the same dream. She's stocking frozen pizzas, and he's just watching her through the glass. Never blinking, never moving, just watching. We brought it up to Pete again. He went pale. Then he admitted something he hadn't told anyone. 6 months ago, a man went missing in the store. He wasn't a customer. He was a refrigeration contractor. Had come in for some after-hours repairs. The night manager gave him access to the walk-in, and apparently he never came out. The door was left open. The equipment was untouched. And there was no sign of him on the cameras. Just gone. They filed a report. Cops searched. The whole thing was brushed off as a runaway case. No foul play, no leads. But Pete remembered what the guy looked like. He pulled up an old file photo the company had for contractor records. My stomach dropped. Same coat, same face, same man. That night I didn't sleep. And a few days later, I turned in my resignation. It's been a year since that Black Friday shift. But sometimes, when I walk past a grocery store at night, I catch a reflection in the glass freezer doors. And I wonder if he's still watching, still trapped, still waiting for someone to open that door and let him out. This story happened to me the year I worked as a seasonal cashier at a superstore chain. You know the type, the ones where people literally camp outside on Thanksgiving night, ready to trample each other the moment those doors open. The store was located in a busy suburb outside Kansas City, and Black Friday was always pure chaos. I was 17, working part-time after school, and this was my first real job. Honestly, I kind of looked forward to my Black Friday shift. I thought it'd be fun. The energy, the buzz, the stories I'd be able to tell. And yeah, it was fun, right up until about 2:15 in the morning when everything shifted. That night, my shift started at 11:30 p.m., just in time for the store to open at midnight. It was the usual Black Friday rush. People sprinting to the electronics section, grabbing stacks of towels, armfuls of cheap toasters. My job was just to keep scanning and bagging. Smile. Repeat. Most customers were impatient, rude, sweaty, loud but predictable. Except for her. I first noticed her in line around 1:45 a.m. She wasn't pushing a cart or holding anything. She just stood there, in the middle of a checkout lane, perfectly still. She was tall, thin, and pale, wearing a light blue blouse and a long gray skirt, not winter attire at all. No jacket, no gloves, nothing. And despite the chaos around her, she didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stared ahead. At first I thought maybe she was waiting for someone else. But people came and went, carts rolled by, and she never moved. Then the customer I was helping asked, "What's up with that lady?" I looked back. The woman had moved forward without making a sound. She was now standing at the edge of the conveyor belt at my register. Still not holding anything. Still not blinking. Just watching. "Mom," I asked, trying to be polite. "Do you need help finding something?" She tilted her head slightly. That's all. I figured maybe she was off mentally. It happens. I called for a manager over the walkie. "Can someone check on a customer at lane 7? No items, just standing here." My manager, Corey, said he'd be there in a second. But before Corey arrived, something else happened. A kid, a little boy about 6 or 7, walked past my lane holding a tablet he clearly wasn't supposed to be playing with. He ran right by the woman and dropped the tablet. It landed hard on the floor. The kid flinched, and the woman looked at him. It was the first time I saw her move. She turned her entire body toward the kid and smiled. Not a warm smile, not a sweet one. It was wide, too wide. Her lips curled up like they were being pulled by strings. And the boy screamed, not a tantrum scream, a terrified scream. He dropped the tablet again and ran back toward his mom, sobbing. The woman turned back to me. expressionless now, like it never happened. Corey showed up a moment later, walking fast, headset in his ear. "Hey, what's going on?" I pointed to the woman. "She's just been standing there. No items. Not saying anything." Corey nodded, walked over to her.
Mom?
"Are you all right? Do you need help?" She said nothing. He tried again. "Do you have someone here shopping with you?" Still nothing. He looked back at me and mouthed, "Call security." I picked up the phone and called the front office. While I was dialing, I glanced back up, and she was gone. Not walking away. Not heading for the door. Just gone. Corey looked stunned. He spun around like he expected to find her ducking under a register or hiding behind a candy rack. But she was nowhere. We checked the cameras. The security footage showed her in line. Still, staring, waiting. And then, frame by frame, she turned to the boy. He screamed. She smiled. And then, static. For exactly 4 seconds, the screen went fuzzy. When it cleared, the frame was the same. The register, the candy rack, the spilled tablet. But she wasn't there. Security did a full sweep. Nothing. Corey told me to take a break, but I couldn't move. My legs were shaking. I spent the next hour pretending everything was normal, but I couldn't stop scanning the crowd, looking for her. That blank face, that smile. Around 3:30 a.m., I was restocking candy at my lane when a woman came up to me with a question about gift cards. As she spoke, her toddler, maybe 2 or 3 years old, was pointing past me, eyes wide. I turned and followed his finger. There, down at the end of the candy aisle, stood the same woman. Same clothes, same posture. She was holding something now, a child's shoe. I blinked, and she was gone again. I ran to get Corey. We searched the aisle together. The cameras were frozen for 20 seconds this time.
No trace.
Later that morning, after sunrise, a woman came into the store in tears. Her daughter had wandered off in the parking lot. She had just turned around to load bags into her car, and when she looked back, the girl was gone, vanished. Police were called. They reviewed footage. At 3:22 a.m., the girl was seen walking toward the exit, and just beyond the glass doors in the shadows outside, the woman was waiting, still, smiling. The child stepped outside, and then the camera glitched. The footage resumed at 3:25. The girl was gone. I quit 2 days later. I don't know what I saw. I don't know what she was. But that blank stare, that inhuman smile, the way the cameras always glitched around her, it wasn't natural. So if you're out shopping this Black Friday, and you notice someone in line not holding anything, not moving, not blinking, don't ask questions. Don't get too close. And whatever you do, don't let them smile at you. This story comes from the year I moved into my first apartment alone. I just turned 24, had a stable job, and was finally able to afford a place that didn't have a roommate eating my food or bringing home weird strangers at 2 a.m. It wasn't glamorous. A 3rd-floor studio in a 100-year-old building near downtown, but it was mine, and I loved it. It had these old wooden floors that creaked when you walked, radiator heat that hissed like a steam engine, and a tiny little balcony that overlooked the alley behind the building. I thought it had character. You know, that romanticized old building charm? That charm wore off fast after my first Thanksgiving living there. See, my family lives out of state, and that year I couldn't afford the flight home. So I stayed in town. My plan was to cook myself a tiny turkey breast, binge-watch old horror movies, and enjoy the silence. But starting the Monday before Thanksgiving, I noticed something odd. My front door lock would be unlocked when I got home. Not wide open or anything dramatic, just the deadbolt turned. At first, I figured I was slipping. Maybe I'd forgotten to lock it in the morning. I was rushing to work most days, after all. But it kept happening. Tuesday, same thing. Wednesday, again. By Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, I was double-checking it before I left to pick up groceries. Like lock the door, wiggle the knob, even yank on it to make sure it was secure. I was gone maybe an hour. Came home, deadbolt unlocked. I stood there in the hallway staring at the door like it had just winked at me. Now, the building only had 4 units, 1 per floor. The landlord, Mr. Petros, lived on the first floor. Quiet, old-school guy. I went downstairs and asked him if anyone had been by my place for maintenance or something. He shook his head. No work orders. And I don't go into people's apartments unless I'm asked. He seemed sincere, even looked a little concerned. He handed me a spare key and said, "Just in case. But if it happens again, you let me know." That night I stayed in, cooked my little turkey, watched the thing, and tried to shake off the weirdness. I was dozing on the couch around 10 p.m. when I heard something from the hallway just outside my door. Thump, scrape, like something being dragged. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. Then click. The sound of my doorknob turning. I bolted off the couch. Someone was trying to get in. I ran to the door and yelled, "Who's there?" The doorknob stopped. Silence. I pressed my ear against the door. Nothing.
No footsteps.
No retreating echoes down the stairs. Just nothing. I called the landlord again. He came up with a flashlight and checked the hallway. No one there. The front entrance downstairs was still locked from the inside. Petros looked more shaken than I'd ever seen him. "I'll check the building's old keys in the morning," he said. "Maybe one's gone missing." He went back downstairs. I locked up, triple locked actually, and left all the lights on that night. I didn't sleep. The next morning, Black Friday, I was supposed to meet a friend for breakfast, but I didn't want to leave my place. I paced the apartment, kept checking the locks, the windows, even the bathroom curtain like I was in a horror movie. Around noon, I heard a knock on the door. A soft, deliberate knock. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. I stood there frozen, heartbeat in my ears. Another knock. Then I noticed something, just barely visible at the bottom of the doorframe. A shadow. Someone was standing there, pressing their back against the wall so I couldn't see them through the peephole. I backed away slowly, and that's when I heard the whisper, right through the crack in the door. "You locked me out again." It was a man's voice, calm, low, familiar almost, but I didn't know anyone who sounded like that. I grabbed my phone and called the cops. When they showed up, the hallway was empty. Again. But this time, they found something. A single old-fashioned key, left on the floor outside my door. One of those long, metal skeleton-style keys like you'd see in a movie. It didn't match any locks in the building. They swept the place, checked the basement, the roof access, nothing. But I couldn't stay there anymore. I packed a bag and spent the weekend at a friend's place. On Monday, I went back with Petros. We checked everything again. And while we were in my apartment, he noticed something odd about the built-in cabinet in the wall. I always thought it was decorative, just a sealed, fake fixture. But he ran his hand along the molding, pressed a little and, click, panel popped open. Inside was a narrow, dark crawlspace. A hidden shaft that ran between the apartments. Probably an old dumbwaiter system that had been sealed off decades ago. Except this one wasn't fully sealed. Inside, dusty and moldy, we found empty cans, old clothes, and a thin mattress pad. Someone had been living in the walls. Petros called the police again. They sealed it off and I moved out the next week. They never found out who the man was, or how long he'd been there. But the part that still haunts me? A day after I moved out, I stopped by to drop off the keys. Petros handed me an envelope.
No stamp.
No address. Just one sentence written on the front, in perfect handwriting. "You don't belong here." This happened to my Uncle Jesse, and it's one of those stories that stuck with me long after he told it, like the kind that doesn't let go. Jesse's a tough guy. Ex-cop, Navy vet, runs his own small moving and storage business in Oregon. He doesn't scare easy. So when he told me the story, dead serious, no jokes, I knew he wasn't messing around. It was the day after Thanksgiving, 2020 Black Friday night, just past midnight. He'd been working all through Thanksgiving weekend. That's peak time for people moving into new apartments, switching rentals, or taking advantage of long holiday weekends to get stuff done. Jesse owns a handful of storage units at this industrial complex about 20 minutes outside town. Real out-of-the-way kind of place. Gravel roads, dense tree line on two sides, and no nearby homes or businesses. It's gated, but he has 24/7 access because he owns several of the units and helps manage the lot. That night, he got a call from a customer. Someone moving their belongings into Unit 38. They'd accidentally left behind a few boxes, and they were worried about them getting soaked in the forecasted rain. Jesse, being the kind of guy he is, agreed to swing by and lock them in the unit properly. Said he was already out in the truck. Anyway, when he got there around 12:30 a.m., the place was dead quiet. The security floodlights buzzed overhead, and mist hung low across the ground, lit up like fog by the pale beams. Jesse's unit was on the far edge of the property, past rows of corrugated metal doors. He pulled up to Unit 38. The boxes were right outside, just like the customer said. So far, nothing weird. He picked them up and stacked them inside. There were 6 total, light stuff, holiday decorations, and books mostly. As he finished stacking them, he noticed something strange. The unit next door, Unit 39, was slightly open. Not wide open, just a few inches. Enough for someone to squeeze through. Now, Jesse was always strict about that. Tenants weren't allowed to leave units open, especially not after hours. He figured someone had made a mistake or maybe gotten locked out. So he knocked gently on the door and called out, "Hello? You all right in there?" No answer. He pushed the door up a little more. Inside was pitch black. No light.
No motion.
He took out his flashlight and shined it in. And he swore in that beam of light he saw something move. Not a person, just a shape. A twitch of motion. Low to the ground. He called out again. "Storage is closed right now. You need help? I'm happy to assist." Still nothing. He stepped inside. There were no boxes.
No furniture.
Just empty concrete. And in the far corner, a chair. An old, rotting wooden chair, facing the wall. That's it. Jesse approached slowly, shining the flashlight toward it. On the wall above the chair, written in black marker, were 3 words: "Sit, don't turn." He stopped. That's when he noticed something else. Tiny scratches all over the concrete floor around the chair. Like someone or something had been pacing in circles over and over again. He turned to leave, and the storage door slammed shut behind him. Complete darkness. He spun around, hit the flashlight button again. Nothing. Dead. Then he heard breathing. Heavy. From the corner. But the chair was empty. He backed away, pulled out his phone. No signal. He pressed his back to the door and yelled, "Hey! Is someone out there? I'm inside Unit 39. Then, from behind him, in a calm, whispered voice, "Don't turn around." His blood ran cold. It was right behind him, inches from his neck. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. Then, in a low growl, "Sit." He felt something brush the back of his neck. That was it. He turned. There was no one there. The door to the unit slowly creaked open on its own. He ran. Didn't stop until he was back in his truck. Threw it into reverse and floored it out of the lot, gravel flying behind him. He didn't sleep that night. The next day he drove back, this time with a gun on his hip. The chair was gone. So was the writing. But those scratches on the floor? Still there. He reported it to the property owner. They said Unit 39 had been empty for over 6 months.
No registered tenant.
No one had used it since a hoarder died and left it packed to the ceiling with junk. Took 2 weeks to clear it out. Jesse asked about surveillance. The cameras facing Unit 39 had gone dark for exactly 12 minutes. From 12:32 to 12:44 a.m., the same time Jesse was inside. Nothing was captured. But get this, the last frame before the feed cut. A single image. The door to Unit 39, wide open, and a dark silhouette crouched just inside the threshold, smiling. Jesse doesn't talk about that night much, but he doesn't take after-hours calls anymore. And Unit 39? Sealed now, bolted shut, not rented, not listed, just sitting there, waiting.